The Galactic Council chamber stretched farther than any human eye could perceive, a cathedral of alien ambitions suspended in orbit above the Iridian Nebula. Light from nearby stars shimmered across crystalline walls, fractured into a kaleidoscope of color by anti-gravity prisms. Hundreds of species from every corner of known space had gathered, each seated in floating platforms shaped by their biology, some humanoid, some entirely unrecognizable, others shifting forms in real time. Above the chamber, a massive holographic map displayed hundreds of planetary systems, marked by flashing indicators that tracked fleets, colonies, and disputed territories. Elias Vance adjusted his posture, taking in the immensity of the council. Humans were still newcomers, Earth barely acknowledged as a minor member of the interstellar coalition. They were ordinary-looking, bipedal, physically weak compared to towering, armored aliens or entities of gaseous composition, but Elias knew the truth: humans endured, adapted, and thrived where others would crumble. The truth, however, had yet to convince the council. "Ambassador Vance?" intoned a deep, resonant voice. The High Chancellor Xyler Kotha's elongated head tilted slightly as his many eyes fixed on the humans' delegation. "Humanity has barely joined our deliberations. How do you justify your presence here amidst ongoing disputes?" Elias inclined his head. "With respect, High Chancellor, our presence is not a threat but a commitment. Humanity seeks cooperation, trade, and mutual defense, just as every member does." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some delegates nodded, others' eyes narrowed. Humans' reputation as weak and inexperienced preceded them, and whispers of doubt circled like predators over a newborn prey. Elias's gaze drifted to the holographic map. One indicator, bright and red, pulsed ominously above a remote system, the Gleason colony. That colony had recently been attacked, and the Council believed humanity responsible. Xyler Kotha's voice cut sharply. "Then how do you explain the attack on Gleason colony, in which your vessels, or those indistinguishable from human design, struck civilian targets?" The chamber erupted. Delegates from the Vril and Ketheri species leaned forward, their many limbs gesturing angrily. "Sanction them," hissed one Vril. "They must answer." Elias remained calm, the weight of the accusation heavy on his shoulders but not on his expression. He had prepared for this. He had anticipated prejudice, underestimation, and outright hostility. The survival of Earth and its billions now rested on the edge of his composure. "High Chancellor, esteemed delegates," Elias said steadily, "the evidence you have been shown is incomplete and misleading. Humanity had no involvement in this attack." A snort of derision came from Xyler Koth. "Incomplete?" he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "The Gleason attack was executed with precise energy signatures matching human propulsion arrays. You would have us believe this was coincidence?" Elias allowed a brief pause, letting the room settle into expectant silence. "Coincidence, or a calculated deception by those who wish to frame us," he replied. His eyes swept across the chamber. "Let us examine the data carefully before judgment. Hasty decisions will cost lives, ours and theirs." For a moment, the aliens hesitated. Some delegates tilted their heads, curious despite themselves. Elias could see subtle shifts, prejudice battling reason. The Council was accustomed to ancient powers, but humans were new, unpredictable. He took a deep breath. "The Gleason colony's sensors recorded signatures inconsistent with any vessel we have deployed. Analysis of the attack trajectory shows maneuvers no human craft is capable of executing at such speed in that sector." Xyler Kotha's multiple eyes narrowed. "And yet, Ambassador, no one else claims responsibility. Humans are an easy target, an anomaly in our records. Your silence during the attack is suspicious." "Silence?" Elias countered. "We monitor our own colonies carefully. We were not present in that sector at the time. More importantly, the true perpetrators masked the assault to implicate us. Our intelligence is precise enough to detect their tampering. I can present the records." A Ketheri delegate hissed, its translucent skin rippling in agitation. "You would present evidence? Or would you weave another human tale?" Elias's lips curved slightly into the faintest hint of a smile. I prefer truth to tales, he said. And humans are nothing if not persistent in pursuit of it. A tense silence followed. Delegates from smaller, neutral species leaned forward, intrigued. Even the vril, typically hostile, paused in their calls for immediate retribution. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. Elias knew the first step was gaining their attention, not convincing them entirely yet. He allowed himself a brief glance at his aide, Lieutenant Mara Klein, who nodded subtly. She had coordinated the evidence packages, the reconstructions of attack vectors, and the forensic data from Earth's intelligence networks. Every hologram, every trajectory calculation, had been prepared for this exact moment. High Chancellor, Elias said, lifting a small hand, if you permit, I will present preliminary evidence that proves humanity's innocence. This is not merely argument, it is data, verifiable by the Council's own standards. Xylar Kotha's many limbs flicked impatiently. Do so, he said, voice sharp. But be warned, if you fail, Earth will answer for this attack. Elias's heart beat steadily, each pulse a reminder of what was at stake. The accusation alone could have been enough to justify sanctions, embargoes, or even military retaliation. Yet he did not falter. Understood, he said, and tapped his wrist console. A holographic display unfolded above the human's table, orbital maps, energy traces, and orbital scans of the Gleason system. The chamber quieted. Delegates leaned closer. The first threads of doubt about humanity's guilt began to ripple through the room. Xylar Kotha's gaze hardened. This better not be another ruse, Ambassador. I will not be fooled. Elias met his eyes steadily. No ruse. Only truth. And the truth, High Chancellor, is that humanity's reach is just beginning. Underestimate us at your own peril, but do not assume weakness where it does not exist. A flicker of unease passed across several delegates' faces. Even Xylar Koth did not immediately respond, his thoughts hidden behind alien cunning. The chamber hummed with tension, prejudice, suspicion, and curiosity colliding. Elias exhaled slowly, knowing this was only the beginning. The evidence must convince the Council, or the consequences could be catastrophic. Humanity's survival, its credibility, and its future in the galaxy rested on what he would do next. And so the stage was set, an entire council of civilizations poised to judge humanity, unaware that they were about to witness a species far more resilient, intelligent, and daring than any had imagined. The chamber was alive with a tense hum, every alien delegate floating slightly above their platforms, limbs or tendrils twitching with anticipation. Holographic projections hovered between them, pulsating with the attack data Elias had summoned. The images of the Gleason colony's destruction shimmered in 3 dimensions, spinning slowly as Elias guided the Council's attention to the inconsistencies. Observe the entry vectors, Elias began, pointing at the holograms with precise gestures. The attack signatures indicate propulsion bursts inconsistent with any human spacecraft. The trajectories are far too erratic, and the energy pulses are misaligned with known human drive frequencies. A vril delegate hissed, limbs vibrating in agitation. Then who, if not humans, could have done this? Elias's eyes scanned the chamber. Someone who wishes to frame us. Someone who understands human technology well enough to mimic it but not enough to replicate the subtle markers of our energy emissions. This is deliberate deception, designed to provoke conflict and force an overreaction from the Council. Xylar Kotha's head tilted, a flicker of unease crossing his multiple eyes. And why should we believe you? Humanity has only recently entered the Council. You have motive, expansion, control, ambition. Elias's tone was steady, firm. Motive? High Chancellor, humanity's current strategy is survival and diplomacy. Expansion may come in centuries, but today, we are concerned with lives, our own and those of countless innocents. The real attackers are hiding in plain sight. If you act without verification, you risk punishing the innocent and emboldening the guilty. A Kethari delegate rippled, translucent skin flickering in color. Do you truly claim your intelligence is sufficient to identify the culprits when your presence in the sector is limited? Elias inclined his head. Limited, yes, but precise. Our analysts have tracked energy residues, examined debris patterns, and cross-referenced them with known technologies. Only a few species could execute this attack with such mimicry. I will provide the Council with their signatures and movements. You can verify them independently. The chamber fell into an uneasy silence. A few neutral delegates leaned forward, curiosity overtaking prejudice. Elias took a breath and summoned the next holographic layer, detailed reconstructions of the attack. Notice the timing, he continued. The assault occurred over 14 minutes, during which human craft were verifiably in orbit around Sol's outer colonies. These records are publicly verifiable. Meanwhile, the attackers used cloaking devices unknown to human fleets. Only a species with access to advanced cloaking, and knowledge of our systems, could orchestrate this frame-up. Xyler Kotha's multiple limbs flicked impatiently. And yet no witnesses claim responsibility. You are asking the Council to gamble on your word, Ambassador. Elias smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't convey amusement but the calm confidence of preparation. Not on my word, High Chancellor. On evidence. We have also recovered communications logs intercepted from the attackers. They coordinated the strike, discussing human culpability. We can authenticate these transmissions. The Council itself can confirm their origin. A murmur ran through the delegates. The chamber's tension thickened, eyes widened, antennae twitched, and claws tapped against floating platforms. The Vril, previously insistent on sanctions, hesitated, a visible shift in stance. You rely heavily on technological proof, a small, insected delegate noted. But evidence can be forged, fabricated, or misinterpreted. Elias nodded. Absolutely. Which is why we present corroborating data, witness reports from unaffected colonies, trajectories that do not match any human craft, and forensic residue analysis. The attack leaves a signature of deception that, once understood, becomes indisputable. I ask only for careful examination, not blind trust. The Council murmured, some delegates exchanging uncertain glances. Even Xyler Koth did not speak immediately. His gaze flicked between the holograms, then to Elias. Elias leaned forward slightly. High Chancellor, esteemed delegates, humanity is capable of ingenuity, yes, but we are not reckless aggressors. Consider the motives. What species benefits most by framing Earth? The chamber stirred. Delegates whispered theories, some pointing fingers at rival factions known for political sabotage. Elias let them discuss, letting doubts seed in minds previously convinced of human guilt. Allow me to demonstrate. Elias continued, tapping the console to reveal energy residue reconstructions and orbital simulations. The hologram spun, showing the attack vessel's path through Gleason space, the cloaking maneuvers, the deliberate timing of decoy energy pulses. Observe here, the decoys are consistent with a faction attempting to provoke war between humans and other systems. Compare these pulses with known human drive markers. They do not match. A murmur of disbelief ran through the chamber. Even Xyler Kotha's expression flickered. A subtle twitch in his mandibular extensions betrayed the first hint of concern. A small, timid delegate from a minor trade species spoke. This does seem compelling. But can we verify it independently? Yes, Elias replied firmly. All data can be cross-checked using Council sensors, logs, and external analysts. We are presenting truth, not conjecture. Humanity does not seek conquest here. We seek recognition and justice. For the first time, the chamber felt uncertain. The accusation had dominated the narrative, painting humans as aggressors. Now, doubt crept in, subtle but unmistakable. Delegates whispered, some leaning closer to view the holograms, their curiosity overcoming prejudice. Xyler Kotha's voice was sharp again, though tinged with a hint of calculation. And if your analysis is correct, Ambassador, who is responsible? Elias's gaze swept the room. I cannot yet provide a name. The evidence points to an organized faction using human mimicry, but they remain hidden. What I can provide is verification of the deception, the impossibility of human culpability, and guidance to identify the true perpetrators. Acting rashly against humans now would play into the attacker's hands." A tense pause followed. Some delegates nodded, slowly acknowledging the logic. Others remained skeptical, defensive, unwilling to admit the possibility of error. Elias leaned back, letting the holograms rotate gently, giving the chamber time to absorb the implications. "High Chancellor," he said, "this is not merely a defense, it is an opportunity. The Council can demonstrate fairness, discernment, and wisdom. You can prevent war before it begins, not punish innocents because of falsehoods. Humanity stands ready to assist in uncovering the truth, not to engage in conflict." The chamber remained still, the tension palpable. Even Xyler Koth, master manipulator, seemed momentarily uncertain. He gestured, and a few council observers floated forward to examine the holographic data personally. Elias allowed himself a single, brief exhale. This was only the beginning. The evidence was strong, but he knew the next step, definitive proof of the true attackers, would determine humanity's survival, credibility, and standing in the galaxy. The Council watched him closely. The next move would either vindicate humanity or plunge it into immediate peril. Elias's fingers hovered above the console, ready to guide the chamber toward revelation. And in that pause, the weight of centuries of human ingenuity, resilience, and courage hung silently over the vast alien assembly. The chamber was tense, a hive of shifting postures and alien murmurs, as Elias Vance prepared to deliver the evidence that could vindicate humanity, or see Earth condemned. Every holographic display now pulsed with high-resolution reconstructions of the Gleason attack, layered with energy traces, debris trajectories, and intercepted communications. The difference this time was decisive. The Council would see not only proof of innocence but the fingerprints of the true perpetrators. "Esteemed delegates," Elias began, voice steady, carrying across the vast space. "What you are about to witness is verifiable through your own sensors, your own intelligence networks, and your own analysts. Humanity did not strike the Gleason colony. The attack was orchestrated by a faction seeking to provoke conflict between humans and the Council for their own gain." A ripple of surprise passed through the chamber. Even Xyler Koth's many eyes flicked sharply, scanning Elias as though calculating whether this was a bluff. "Observe the energy residues," Elias said, gesturing to the holographic overlays. Streams of light traced through Gleason space like glowing threads in a web. These are inconsistent with human propulsion and weapon arrays. They correspond to the Dravari Dominion's cloaking technology, verified through Council records. The Dravari have exploited the confusion of our recent expansion into interstellar diplomacy. Xyler Koth's limbs twitched, a subtle, almost imperceptible sign of irritation. "And how can the Council be certain that this is not a human fabrication designed to shield themselves?" Elias met the gaze without hesitation. "Because these traces match independently recorded sensor data from 3 neighboring systems, including 2 outside the Dravari's usual sphere of influence. Council analysts can verify the signature patterns themselves. The anomaly is Dravari in origin, not human." A Kethari delegate hissed softly, translucent skin rippling. "And the intercepted communications?" Elias brought up a separate holographic layer, encrypted transmissions decrypted and timestamped. Alien voices, unmistakably Dravari, discussed the timing, cloaking patterns, and deliberate framing of humanity. "They coordinated to maximize suspicion of human culpability," Elias explained. "Note the timestamps. They predicted exactly how Council protocols would misinterpret the energy signatures." The chamber fell into a stunned hush. Alien delegates floated closer to the displays, antennae and limbs reaching instinctively toward the evidence. Whispered confirmations traveled across the assembly. Even those previously hostile to humanity paused, re-evaluating assumptions. Xyler Koth's voice rose, sharper than before, tinged with a warning. "And you expect the Council to accept this at face value? You ask us to absolve humanity while implicating the Dravari?" Elias's eyes narrowed, calm and unwavering. "Not at face value," I ask you to examine the data as the Council does, rigorously, thoroughly, without prejudice. Evidence is irrefutable here. And if you act before verification, you risk repeating the very errors the Dravari intended. Humanity is innocent. Council wisdom demands you recognize this before sanctioning the wrong party. A murmur of agreement spread. Neutral delegates, previously hesitant, began calling for independent verification. Even some Vril and Kethari voices softened, reluctant but willing to consider the evidence. The tide was shifting. You speak boldly, human, Xylarkoth said, his tone dripping with menace. Bold enough that I wonder if it is cunning or arrogance. Elias did not flinch. Bold enough to prevent a needless war, High Chancellor. Humans may be underestimated, but we are not fools. If the Council acts without truth, all of you will pay the cost. A sudden projection zoomed in on a Dravari vessel, its cloaking traces highlighted in spectral blue. Elias guided the Council's attention. Captured by patrol drones yesterday, this vessel was traced to the sector where the Gleason attack was staged. The data confirms the pattern of deception. This is the final piece of evidence that demonstrates the framing operation in full. The chamber erupted in stunned discussion. Xylarkoth's multiple limbs flicked with impatience, but even he could not deny the clarity of the holographic proof. Delegates argued, shouted, and debated, but one by one, they were drawn to the logic and precision of Elias's presentation. Finally, Xylarkoth's voice cut through the clamor, low and calculated. If this is true, then humanity has been wronged. But how can we trust this is not yet another manipulation? Elias stepped forward, projecting his voice evenly across the assembly. Because the Council itself can verify every element, energy traces, timestamps, witness logs, vessel paths. Nothing here is beyond independent confirmation. The Council is capable of discerning truth. I trust your judgment. The silence that followed was tense, charged with the weight of decision. Delegates leaned closer to the holograms, scanning, comparing, and cross-referencing. A few began nodding, expressions shifting from skepticism to reluctant respect. At last, a Vril delegate floated forward, limbs steady. This is undeniable. The human account aligns with our records. Others echoed the sentiment. A wave of acknowledgement spread. Xylarkoth's gaze lingered on Elias, calculating, then finally he inclined his head, a subtle concession. Very well. The Council will recognize humanity's innocence. The Dravari shall answer for this deception. Ambassador Vance, you have presented your case with precision. Elias allowed himself the slightest, restrained nod. Thank you, High Chancellor. Let this serve as a reminder. Underestimating humanity carries risks. The tension in the chamber slowly eased. Delegates who had demanded immediate sanctions now discussed reparations, investigation of the Dravari, and protocols to prevent future attacks. The Council had shifted from suspicion to collaboration, drawn by evidence, logic, and the unwavering calm of a human ambassador. Elias turned briefly to his aide, Mara Klein, who gave a small nod. They had done it. Humanity had not only avoided disaster but had earned the Council's respect. Not through force, not through intimidation, but through careful analysis, moral clarity, and decisive action. He allowed himself a moment to look outward, past the chamber's walls, to the swirling nebula beyond. Earth, distant and fragile, now stood vindicated in the galaxy's eyes. Its people, underestimated, dismissed, and often mocked, had proven themselves capable of strategy, intelligence, and honor under pressure. Elias returned his gaze to the Council. Let this moment be a precedent, he said, voice firm, carrying across the chamber. Humanity may be new to interstellar politics, but we are here to endure, to reason, and to contribute. Those who assume weakness will find us prepared. Those who doubt will find us steadfast. And those who seek injustice will find us resolute. The chamber fell silent. Even Xylarkoth, for all his pride and cunning, did not interrupt. Humans were no longer a curiosity to be dismissed. They were a presence, an intellect, and a force to be reckoned with. As the delegates began departing, discussing next steps in hushed tones, Elias felt a rare weight lift. This was the beginning, not the end, but humanity had crossed the threshold. In the vast, indifferent galaxy, Earth had carved a space for itself. Not with weapons, but with courage, clarity, and unwavering resolve. And somewhere, deep in the threads of interstellar politics, a subtle ripple of caution spread. Humans could not be underestimated again.